Trust, land trust, personal property trust, man, they are some of the greatest tools that we use as real estate investors, but they're also some of the most complicated things and hard to understand, and people have a lot of problems with them. It's really funny. I remember when I first got started with land trust, I couldn't understand anything about it. I was laying pieces of paper all over my desk, all over the floor, trying to figure out what went together. What do you file first? What do you do with this and that? And then all of a sudden I got it. And I've never bought another single property without trust. So land trust is what we're going to talk about this morning. So we'll be back in 45 seconds. Good morning, Deed Grabbers. Welcome to Goat Talk. Goat Talk is our weekly Facebook and YouTube live training. If you're on here with us on Facebook or YouTube, tell us your name, tell us where you're located, your favorite type of investing strategy, and make sure while you're with us, you get over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, sub2deals.com/YouTube. We drop a lot of videos every week, all kind of goat nuggets, goat talk, our podcast, all kind of tips and tricks to help you with your real estate investing. Listen, if you're looking for some real estate training that's super affordable, check out our $7 coaching. I guarantee you won't find a more affordable coaching program on the planet for creative finance subject to. We talk about everything over there. I'll answer all your questions every week. Where are you going to get that for $7? So make sure you join us for that. Let's go ahead and get started. I got my buddy Bill Bronchick here this morning. Morning, Bill. How are you?
I'm awesome. You know, I saw your little intro there, and next time I'll pick up one of my guitars there and play along.
There you go. Do that. I had somebody the other day compliment us on our podcast interest. Said, man, you must have paid a company a lot of money to get that done. I said, no, actually, my wife does those things for me.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I hired graphics people over and over. They were expensive. They weren't reliable. Yeah. I found her and she could do it, so I married her.
Fantastic. You're lucky with that.
Yeah, that's true. Listen, guys, ask your questions. That's what we're here for today. Trust A to Z. Hey, Luke, good to see you. The two wheels. Where there's a will, there's a way. You got it. So we're talking about trust this morning. Land trust, personal property trust, whatever your questions are, let's have them. We've been talking a lot about trust lately. I know you and I had a conversation recently about trust and how to get paid.
How to get a check, cash paid, payable to your trust by the title company.
Right.
I know that's a challenge. People, have come across that myself for years. What I used to be able to do was convince my title company, listen, here's the trust. My LLC is the beneficiary. Write it to them or wire it to me as trustee to a different, or my trustee's account to a different account. And they just became sticklers. Like, no, it's got to be whoever's on the closing statement has to be the check. And so I figured out a couple little workarounds, and they work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are they secrets? You want to share those with us this morning?
Well, the simplest, I wouldn't say the simplest, but the most obvious thing is the trust can open a bank account. You just go to irs.gov, you get an FEIN number, just like you would for a revocable living trust. And you open up a bank account and you cash the check, you write it over to your whoever, your LLC, your beneficiary, and then you close the account. And that's kind of a pain, it's a to-do. So what I figured out is sort of like a workaround is usually I have an LLC that's a beneficiary. So what I do is I go on the Secretary of State, and it's not the same in every state, but in my state, it's very easy and it's instant and it's cheap. I file a doing business as or trade name or fictitious name, you know, however you want to call it, called the name of the trust. So my company, XYZ LLC, doing business as 1231 Oak Street Trust, right? You download that certificate instantly. You bring it to the bank and say, add this to my LLC account. It's a DBA for my LLC. They put it on file, and then I cash the check made payable to the trust in my LLC account, and then cancel the DBA. Now, it's not that easy in every state. Some states you have to register to the county. Sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes it's expensive. You know, not every bank will do this, but that has worked like a charm for me.
Oh, well, great. That's good information. I'll tell you, I've had more than one student have a problem with that. And I think some of it's relationship. If, you know how it is with banks. I mean, if you go in there all the time, the teller knows you a lot of times.
Like sometimes what I used to be able to do is double endorse the check. So the check's payable to, 123 Main Street Trust. I would write 123 Main Street Trust on the back, and then write pay to the order of, ABC company, and then double endorse it over. I used to get away with it, then they stopped allowing it. With smaller checks, you can do it. Like if it's under 10, you could sneak it in the night box. But if I try to do an $80,000 check, they'll be like, "Nice try. You can't do it."
Right. So what about on wires, though? I mean, you can have the title company wire it. They should take that right into any account you direct that to.
Some title companies allow to wire. I just give them an account and routing number. But some title companies said, well, the name doesn't match the name on the closing statement, so we can't do that.
Yeah, a lot of rules.
Yeah, I have an escrow company since 1997, and I used to do a lot of closings. And what I would do is just have an affidavit that, which I shared with you, which basically says, "Dear title company, the beneficiary of this land trust is ABC company. Please write the proceeds check to the company or to the trustee." It's tricky.
Right.
Depends who your title company is, depends who your bank is, and, the process in your state for doing DBAs. You're going to have to just work around what you have.
Right.
The bottom line is, if you have a land trust agreement, notarized and signed, and you get an FEIN number for it at the IRS website, they should be able to open an account for the trust.
Right.
And then you just cash the trust check and then write it out to whomever, and then close the account. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but
that would be my least
favorite
option as far as doing. The best thing I think is probably just to interview your title companies that you're going to be dealing with and find out what their take is on it, and find out ahead of time what they're going to want to be able to write the check the way you need it done.
Right. Sometimes they'll do it payable to the trustee.
Right. Okay. Good to know. Hey, Corey, good to see you this morning. Let's see. Jeffrey, good to see you. Sarah's here from Memphis. I got Mary Hart here. Hey, Mary, good to see you on here. Let's see. Cindy Crane's here. Good to see you. Luke says, does Bill have his software in his trust course that makes creating a land trust very simple? Could he elaborate on his land trust course more?
Yeah, I used to license a piece of software that was a word plugin that allowed you to fill in blanks off of questions. And that just became antiquated. And I didn't want to be in the software business anyway, because people will complain. I'm using Vista and it's not working. And it's mostly user error. So what I did was, my courses are all online now, of course. So in the portal, when you log in the course, I have an online version of that where it's like a form you fill in online and it emails you the trust agreement. It's not that hard. I mean, it's about 7 blanks on a trust agreement in Word. But it makes it easier.
Right. And you guys can get that at legalwiz.com. Okay. So y'all go over there and check it out. All right. Any other questions? I know you guys hit me with land trust questions all the time. So don't be shy this morning. That's why we're here.
While we're waiting for questions, let me just give you a couple of tips.
Okay.
First, don't call your land trust a land trust in the title of the trust name. So don't call it 123 Main Street Land Trust, because you're just going to confuse people, because most people outside of the states that commonly use it, like Illinois, Florida, and so forth, people are confused. What's a land trust? What does that mean? Because there's another type of land trust that is that the Native Americans use, for trusts for land. So don't confuse them with that. Just call it 123, Main Street Trust or something like that. And a land trust, see how people get confused. A land trust is not an entity. It's not like a corporation or LLC where you file with the state. It's a contractual agreement between parties. So you have the creator of the trust, the grantor or trustor. You have the trustee, whose job is it to manage the trust assets. And then you have the beneficiary or beneficiaries whose benefit that arrangement is made for. In most cases, we're making what's called a self-settled trust, meaning you're creating a trust for yourself. So the beneficiary and grantor or settlor are the same person. So there's really only two parties to the agreement, the creator and beneficiary and the trustee. So it's a written agreement, just like a living trust you do for estate planning. In fact, when people ask, what type of trust is this, at a title company or something? It's a revocable living trust. Now, that's not the same thing you'd use for estate planning, which we usually call a revocable living trust. But revocable means changeable while you're alive, and living means created while you're alive. So revocable living, it is a revocable living trust. It's just a different type of revocable living trust. Right.
Okay. Great. Let's see. Facebook user. Now, if you'll go to StreamYards.com/Facebook, I think we'll be able to see who you are. So go over there and check that out. Can a trust that's in my personal, can a house that's in my personal name be transferred to a trust?
A rust. Only a car. The house can't rust, unless it's a mobile home.
That's right. That is right.
Yes, it can be. Now, it could be what a lot of people do for estate planning is they transfer it to their estate planning trust, which avoids probate and has a number of other benefits. Can you put it in a land trust? Yes, you can. And the purpose of the land trust, remember, is anonymity. Your personal residence in a land trust doesn't really fool a lot of people because, they know it's where you live and it's your home. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. But if you want estate planning, what people would do is stack the trust. So you put your property in a land trust, and the beneficiary, instead of being you, would be your estate planning living trust. Does that make sense? So instead of your house being titled in the William Tingle Family Revocable Trust, it'll be titled in 123 Main Trust. And the beneficiary of 123 Main Trust is William Tingle Revocable Family Trust. So you could do anonymity and estate planning at the same time. A land trust is not made for estate planning. It's made for anonymity. That's all.
Right. Okay. Cool. Luke said, do you recommend immediately removing the initial trustee to someone else or yourself upon closing to make things easier for title other situations?
In my experience, the only thing the land trustee is going to do is sign papers when you refi or close, which can be done by mail. It's not a big deal. The only other time I had a problem was I went to go to a zoning meeting to get something, to get a variance on a carport that was not in compliance. So what I did is I amended the trust agreement to have a co-trustee, me. Now, that's not on public record anywhere. So when we record the original transfer into the trust, it shows John Doe trustee.
Right.
After that, we amend the trust agreement to say I'm a co-trustee with the same powers, but that's not public record. So I walked into the zoning hearing and they said, who are you? And I'm so-and-so co-trustee. And I showed them that amendment and I negotiated the variance and got it. So if you need to do something as trustee behind the scenes, be a co-trustee, but don't be the one on record.
Okay. All right. Because, one of the old ways that, we've heard over the years to do it is immediately upon closing on this property that you're buying in a trust, you have the original trustee resign, you appoint a successor trustee, but you forget to go record that until right before you sell the property. You go, oh my gosh, I opened the file. Here's this.
Oops.
Yeah, I got to go.
Yeah. That's generally, what we do in Colorado. See, Colorado's a little weird. We have a statute that specifically says a trust can take title in its own name, not John Doe as trustee of the XYZ trust, but just XYZ trust. There's a separate affidavit we file called a certificate of authority or statement of authority that says, hi, I'm William Tingle, the trustee, because I say so. Here's my signature, which is ridiculous because anybody could file one. Right. So if you neglect to file that and you're the trustee, it says you may file it. May. It doesn't say must. Title companies think it says must. So when you go sell it, then they require it. But at that point, you're already sold the property. So who cares if they know you're the trustee?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Ethan asks, how can I structure a trust with a land contract so that the trust containing the house is sold and not the house itself, allowing for eviction versus foreclosure if needed? Is this legal? I'm in Ohio. And I think what he's talking about is something that's common in Texas, where you can't sell on a land contract. So what they do is actually sell the beneficial interest of a trust as personal property, and then they'll record a UCC lien against that and foreclose on that if they have to.
Yeah, that's nice in theory, but good luck trying it. Yeah. In Illinois, it's very specifically allowed by statute. So what you're selling under Illinois law, the beneficial interest in a land trust is personal property, not real estate. Right. So you do an installment sale of the personal property. And then when the buyer doesn't pay, you do a UCC Article 9 foreclosure, which is faster than a regular foreclosure. And it's, try to convince a judge of this is very difficult outside of Illinois. I think the easiest thing to do is just simply, which I do 99 times out of 100 when someone defaults, is go to them and say, look, you gave me 20 down. I'll give you $5,000 if you're out in 2 weeks and all your stuff is gone. Just transfer keys, get rid of them. Avoid the whole court thing.
Yeah, I would, and actually I heard somebody put it this way one time. They said they would go knock on the door and say, listen, I've got a check here for $5,000. I can either give it to you or my lawyer.
Exactly.
What do you want me to do?
And it's like, I had a student call me up, and this was on a lease option, but same principle. The property had gone up $100,000 in value, and they wanted to throw them out on a technicality. I go, the judge is not going to allow it. It's too much value. So if there is $100,000 in equity, you're in for a foreclosure fight. You have to go through the foreclosure process. It's worth it. If it costs you $15,000 in 6 months, is it worth it to get $100,000 in equity back?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's worth it. So in my experience, see, the challenges with contracts for deed or land contracts is not every state has a specific forfeiture procedure. So in some states, they say, you go through a forfeiture, which is a little longer than an eviction, but shorter than a foreclosure. In some states like Indiana, they say if you have less than a certain amount of equity, it's a forfeiture. But if you have more than enough equity, it's a foreclosure. States like Florida, it's always a foreclosure. So again, weigh the A versus B. Is it cheaper for me to pay an attorney, pay the underlying loan that's there for 6 months? Or is it cheaper to just pay the guy a few grand to leave? Like Tony Soprano says, don't get personal. It's just business.
Yeah, that's right. And, that's why I tell you guys a lot. I say, listen, if you're thinking about going into a certain market in a certain state, do the research. Spend that $200 or $300 on that legal book on foreclosure and eviction law in that state. And I've had a whole lot. I probably had as many legal books as you do, Bill. Just different, things, because I wanted to know. And it's interesting what you can learn in those things about a lot of little hidden things that you can do and how you can take care of things. So know the laws where you're going, because they're different everywhere.
Yeah.
for sure. Let's see. Next question. How much would it cost to get it done? I'm not that versed in legal stuff, and I believe this is the person asking about transferring title to a property they already have into a trust.
It's not terribly expensive. You create a land trust agreement, and you create a deed that transfers it from the current owner to the trust and record it down at the county. Now, as an attorney, I usually charge about $500-$600 for a trust, a little extra for the deed. And if they want me to e-record it, which I have e-recording in my state, I'll charge them to e-record it instead of physically going down to the county. So all in all, it's under $1,000. But some states, your recording fees are enormous. Not the deed fee, I mean the transfer tax. Right. In most states, a transfer it into a trust is exempt from transfer tax. Okay, Pennsylvania, it's not. So right. it's like 2 or 3% of the value of the property, which is enormous. Well, actually, it's not that enormous. Properties in Pennsylvania are cheap. So if it's like $100,000 property, maybe $3,000. In Florida, for example, a transfer there's a mortgage tax, not a deed transfer tax. So it could be $800 in mortgage tax because there's a mortgage on it when you transfer it into a land trust.
But some states will allow you to transfer into a trust without paying that transfer tax.
Most will. Most have an exemption.
And that's a cool thing when you're buying subject to without paying transfer tax.
Right. Well, here's the thing. If there's no change in beneficial ownership, so if William Tingle transfers it into a trust for the benefit of William Tingle, there's no change in beneficial owner, no tax. But if William Tingle transfers it into a trust for the benefit of Bill Bronchick, that's not exempt. So we could do it in 2 steps. We could say we put it in a land trust, exempt. A month later or a week later, we assign the beneficial interest that belongs to William to Bill Bronchick. That technically should be subject to it, but not every state has a clear statute on that. I know, like in some states like California, they look for it because in California, they have this thing called Prop 13, where your property taxes are fixed until there's a sale, and then they jump the valuation to the new value. So if no, quote, transfer to a new buyer happened, no change in taxes. But if I was buying from you subject to, like I just described, technically there should be a reassessment.
Right.
So,
but a cool thing about the cost is that once you get somebody like Bill to prepare the documents for you, you understand how it works, then all you have to do is duplicate that anytime.
Yeah.
Then land trust costs nothing.
It's not like there's no annual fee, tax return, ongoing requirements. A trust is a contract. It's not an LLC. So it's a one-time setup.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, good to see you this morning. Brad's here with us. Next question. Corey asked, can trust be renamed? For example, if we buy a property and establish 123 Main Street Trust, once that property is out of the picture, can that trust be renamed for use on a different property?
Well, in theory, you can amend the trust and change the name, but it's just as easy to create a new trust. There's no filing fee. It's just paper. It's just paper.
The trust really, Corey, is just some documents. If I buy a property from you, subject to, and take title in a trust, which I'm going to do, I'll carry that property however long I've got it. Once I sell it, that trust is dissolved. It's gone. You're going to form a new one with the next property that you want to put in a trust.
Right.
So, yep. Let's see. Matt, good morning, Matt. Good to see you. Corey has another question. A local attorney suggested we have all of those trusts that we set up and used, but now aren't being used any longer now that the property's been disposed of. like trusts are reusable.
Yeah. I mean, in theory they are, but it's kind of paper it's written on. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just paper. I mean, it just goes in the file with that property file. It's gone. It's
but I mean, there's only 5 or 6 blanks that change on the form. I just rented a VRBO to go up to the mountains in July, and the property management company sent me a DocuSign with 42 paragraphs. That was more complicated than a land trust.
Right.
I denied it. I'm not signing this. Screw you.
A trust is really simple.
I already reserved
really
the deal. I'm paid. I'm not agreeing to 42 more conditions.
Right. Yeah, it's really simple. I'll tell you, but I did learn a lot during my divorce. And that was, when they're appointing receivers and everything, and they bring me into this room with this huge mahogany table, and all the partners are coming in to listen to the deposition because they're trying to figure out how all the real estate is held. And I'm like, and one of those guys is like a senator now. I mean, these are smart guys, right? But they didn't know what in the world was going on with all this real estate and how they're all in trust and what do you really own and what do you have? It was amazing. They don't get it.
No.
Luke says, not a trust question. What does Bill think about the 40-year mortgages coming back, or even assumable mortgages making a return with the market correction?
I have no problem with 40-year mortgages, 50-year mortgages, 100-year mortgages, whatever works for you. It makes the payment lower. I've bought property seller financing with 40-year mortgages because it made the payment lower.
Right.
I don't like 15-year mortgages. I don't know about you, but you can always make extra principal payments and pay off earlier, but it screws up your debt to income ratio when you take out 15-year mortgages in your name on your credit report.
Right. We've been writing 40-year notes for land contract buyers for 10 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, "Oh, you can't do that, Dodd-Frank, blah blah blah." But Dodd-Frank doesn't say a thing about.
I just did one for a client on a 50-year. So it's doable. Assumable mortgage making a return. I don't know why you would think that would be the case, because not assumable without qualification. That is because with interest rates rising, lenders don't want assumable mortgages. They want people to refi and get higher rates.
They're all assumable as far as I'm concerned.
The question is, do you want to qualify for it?
Oh, no, we're not doing any of that. When purchasing subject to and holding the property in a trust, can the seller be named in the trust as a beneficiary to avoid the due on sale?
Well, that's a technicality that a friend of mine had been using for 25 years. I don't know if he's still doing it. I'm not going to mention his name. But the statute says you can transfer property into a revocable trust so long as the borrower is and remains a beneficiary. So his theory was we transfer 99%.
Right.
And leave 1%, and therefore it doesn't trigger it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's correct, but think of all of the complicated problems that could arise leaving the guy in there.
Yeah.
As 1%. What if he files bankruptcy and the whole thing is tied up in a bankruptcy? What if he dies? Who needs that? I'll take my chances. Yeah.
Well, my understanding of the due on sale clause, it says any interest is transferred. So, I think you buy subject to, it doesn't matter the technicalities, how the paperwork works.
Right.
In the end, I'm buying the house. The due on sale clause has been violated. There's no escaping violating that.
No. If you get caught, you say, well, you got me.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Yep. Okay, Brad's got a question. Let's say I pay you to set up my first trust. Then do I have a template for future ones, or does each one have to be per property?
No, I usually give the client in Microsoft Word the soft doc so that if they want to redo it.
Well, there you go. All righty. That's the last question we've got. So let's go back to some of the questions here that we get a lot. You'll have some people say you can't use a trust in all 50 states. But I say you can. There just may not be statutes that recognize it, but you can take title any way you want to.
Yeah, Louisiana and Tennessee have had court cases saying we don't recognize land trusts here. Now, it was not the fact that they're not illegal that you can't use them. It was a state issue of which state gets the estate tax, so they had to rule one way or another. Would I still do it? Yeah, I mean, because what's the worst that can happen is the trust is void and the beneficiary is the owner.
Right.
So if you're in court arguing over the validity of a trust, it's a moot point.
Right.
The whole point of the land trust was, I don't want anyone to know who really owns it. And if you're in court arguing over the validity of the document, you're busted.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't matter at that point. They already know you're the one.
Right. They already know that you're somewhere under there at that point. The point is that if you make it difficult for tenants and attorneys and code inspectors and ex-spouses and whoever to figure out who the owner is, then it does its job. Once they figure it out, and you're going to say, well, it's a valid land trust. No, it's not. That's a moot point.
Right. So I would say, and this is what I say when all this comes up about, well, what if you're in court? It's just like you said, once you're in court, the jig's up anyway.
Right.
But your best protection is, and it doesn't always work. Let me tell you, I know I've been sued several times. It's going to happen. If you're in this business, you're going to get sued. Tenants, buyers, it just happens. But your best protection, the first line of defense, is to try to do honest, ethical business and treat people fairly. That's your first.
That avoids a lot of problems.
A lot of them. Now, they won't avoid all of them because you can't make everybody happy.
Not every every good deed doesn't go unpunished, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. I think we've got a couple other questions. When purchasing, subject to. Okay, I think we've got that one. Brad's question. Okay. All right. I guess we do have them all there. So my next question, and this came up recently, can you use an entity as your trustee?
In theory you can, but that it avoids the purpose of why you set up the trust. One of the purposes is anonymity. So if your trustee is Uncle Joe at a P.O. box in Kentucky, it's hard to get a hold of that person.
Right.
If you put a Wyoming LLC, well, you just serve the registered agent in Wyoming, and you've got service of process on them, and you know who's tied to that. So it really doesn't. It doesn't really give its effectiveness. It's doable, but I like a person better.
Right. I know in the very beginning, that's the way I was taught. Your ideal trustee is a person with a different last name that lives out of state. And how does somebody find, okay, it's the 123 Oak Street Land Trust, Bob Jones as trustee. Oh my gosh, where do you even start with Bob Jones?
Exactly, at a P.O. box. Because an LLC needs a physical address to serve summonses on. A trustee does not.
Right. A
trustee can be a P.O. box.
Okay. So, all right, guys, if y'all have any more questions, let's have them. We've got a little bit more time before Bill's got to get out of here this morning. So what about personal property trust? Now, there's some people that say you should have every single thing that you own, from your bank account, your car, stocks, bonds, Bitcoin, whatever, everything in a personal property trust. What do you think about that?
There's a balance between living your life and getting the most you can out of these strategies. So you have to balance, like, how far do you want to take this?
Right.
The main reason I started with personal property trust was in states that when you file, like, let's say an LLC, and they want to know who's the member, put a personal property trust. That gives you anonymity on record with the filing.
Right.
If I had an RV and I owned it free and clear and I wanted to put it in a trust, yeah, I do that. A boat, yeah. But a car that you have a loan on, you can't do that. You don't have the title.
Right.
And also, what I found is that some insurance companies don't like it either. They want to charge you like a commercial rate if it's in a trust versus in a name. It doesn't provide you any liability protection. It's just anonymity. So with cars, 99.9% of the time, if you get into a car accident, your insurance is going to cover if you have enough of it. A boat, an RV, let's say you were holding a mortgage note on record and you didn't want, you or your company to be the mortgagee, you could hold it in a personal property trust. Sure. A bank account, you could, but the bank's going to want to know who the beneficiaries are because of the Patriot Act.
Right.
And then the signatories on the account.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do you that much good for things like that. But, like I'd say like an RV boat, something like that, that's registered with the DMV. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And some people listening to this may not remember this. I do. I mean, it was, I don't know, 15 years ago now when there was a big thing about subject to and everything in North Carolina. I'm sure you remember that.
Remember, tried to pass an anti-subject to law.
Right. And one of their big things was that the trust was generally involved and that somehow meant that, I don't know, it was just evil in some way.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that as far as, and they were saying, well, you shouldn't use trust when you take a property subject to. And I said, listen, I think one of the key things here is I don't just use a trust for sub-twos. If we buy for cash, we take it in a trust. It doesn't matter. If we buy property, so we show overall, we're not just using a trust for deception as far as the bank goes or anything else. It's an across the board thing.
This is where it gets a little tricky. Some people have suggested using the seller's name as the name of the trust. Like William Tingle will put it into the William Tingle Family Trust, but the beneficiary will be Bill Bronchick. And there's two reasons to do that. One is to fool the bank into thinking it really didn't transfer, which is deceptive.
Right.
The other reason is insurance. It's easier to get the insurance changed if it's, a William Tingle borrower, William Tingle trust. But it creates a lot of confusion. I've seen a lot of lawsuits where attorneys have alleged some sort of deception there, that the client was confused because it's William Tingle Trust and William Tingle's out. And what do you mean William Tingle's out? It's the William Tingle Trust. So I think it creates more problems than necessary. I used to do is put it in a trust and then assign the beneficial interest.
Right.
I don't bother with that one anymore. I just create a trust. My LLC is the beneficiary.
Right.
And then that's the buyer on the contract. The seller goes directly to my trust. And then there's no confusion. There's no confusion.
Right. Yeah, that was always my thought on it. If you try to do that, then it would be easy for somebody to say later they thought they were still the beneficial interest of that property. And I'm not trying to trick the bank. I really don't care if they find out, because most people, 2/3 of the people we deal with are in some kind of financial hardship anyway. They can't pay. So I mean, the option was to give it back to the bank, be foreclosed on, whatever.
Right. And you made up their back payment. So what's the lender going to do?
That's right.
They're not going to want to do it. You just made a non-performing loan performing, and then they're not going to turn around and make it non-performing again.
Right. For sure. And I mean, you can always give it back to the seller and stop the problem. But, I mean, if that's what you want to happen, I've never had to do that.
No.
Because I've never had a loan call due. I mean, I've heard of some that have, and I don't know if you ever have or not, but I've never even gotten a letter.
I had a property of my own loan that I put in a land trust, and then I changed insurance like 6 years later, and I got a standard letter from Flagstar Bank, which I know several people who have had a problem with Flagstar Bank.
Right.
And they said, you've transferred the property. We're, calling it due. So I called them up and go, what are you doing? And they go, well, you sold the property. I go, I didn't sell the property. It's in a trust, and I'm connected to that trust. And they went, oh, okay.
I always felt like all these people at the bank, they're $15 an hour employees with a checklist. And if something doesn't fit, and that's why it's important to always make sure when you buy subject to, and I'm not sure what rules you follow anymore, but we make sure that our seller's name is on there, is included on that new policy.
Sometimes, so you have to change the policy on the insurance from Joe Seller to the trust as the new insured. I have my trustee and my beneficiary as additional insurance for liability, but when that change of insurance goes to the bank and the borrower, the seller, is not on there, some banks does not compute. So we just add the former owner on as an additional insured. Most of the time, that's fine.
That's right. Okay, let's see. We've got another question. Matt said, if we use your land trust course, would you recommend hiring an attorney to create the trust still? I'd just hire Bill. If you're going to hire an attorney.
Here's the thing. My land trust course is do it yourself. It's intended to be. I would never, as an attorney, discourage you from having an attorney review it. But the challenge is if you go to like a generic attorney who's a jack of all trades in your local state and said, review this that he's never seen before, he's going to charge you 3 times the cost of my course to review it. If you have a local attorney in your state who knows land trusts, and you're lucky of that, then yeah, it doesn't hurt to have them review it. Make sure you filled it out right. That's okay. Well, I would never discourage it, but at the same time, my course is meant to be do it yourself. I have, the state by state guides in there, and the different deeds for every state and little intricacies for each state, revealed in the course. But of course, I would never discourage you from having an attorney review it.
Right. Well, I know you for a while were doing specific paperwork packages for states. So like if Matt's in Alabama, I'm not sure where you are, Matt, but if he's in Alabama, he could contact you and you could put together a trust for Alabama. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, what I was doing was like, I have a subject to course and in this course and in that course. And for an extra upcharge, I would give you a state specific form contract for that state.
Right. Vegas. Okay. Well, that's not as bad as Alabama, I guess. Oh my goodness. Okay, guys, if y'all have any other questions, let us know. All right. So any other advice on trust? I mean, as far as just tips and things for everybody?
Yeah. Just make sure that you, when you do the land trust, make sure you fill it out right. Obviously, you got to change the insurance if you change title, doing like a subject to. And then in terms of the lease, the landlord is the trust. Now you could have what I do is, I have multiple properties and land trusts, and I don't have bank accounts for them. I have a property management company that all the tenants make their checks payable to that property manager. And then I cut checks to the beneficiaries of the land trust as the clients.
Right. So that's a really good tip there, that you should have your trust sign a property management agreement with the management. I have one of
my land trust course, a very simple one that says, so-and-so trust hires XYZ LLC, your own company, to do. And it's worse. What I suggest you do is do it as an S corp. Take a management fee. To suck some of that rent income off the properties, which makes the net reportable income for your properties lower. And then that money that's in the S corp, you expense it with other things.
Right. I'll tell you, that was a really big key to my first years as an investor. And I got all of Bill's courses. I tell that story sometimes about how I saw him at one of the first conventions I went to. And by the end of his presentation, I was turned around in my chair waiting to run to the back of the room. And so I left with all of these binders and all these courses on corporations and LLCs and everything else, but setting things up where you can expense as much as you can out of your business, your cell phones, office space, part of your house. Just everything you can write off, and then drawing a super, super low salary as your management fee.
Right.
So your personal taxes are so low or non-existent if you got kids.
Right.
So, man, for years I skated on taxes and everything like that. It gets to a certain point you can't, but that's important.
Yeah. The ultimate conundrum. How do you look broke to the IRS, but rich to a bank to get a loan?
So you don't get loans, man. That's why I switched over to getting the deal.
You don't get loans. I haven't gotten a bank loan in years.
That's right. Okay. So, is all of that explained in the course?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys, I got started with this guy. He is instrumental in my success, and I haven't had a job in 23 years now, largely because of this guy.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned your $7 coaching, which is unbelievably cheap. Did you see the movie, The Something About Mary?
I did not. I did not
He's driving along. He picks up what turns out to be a serial killer, and the guy goes, "You know that 10-minute ab thing? I got a better thing, 9-minute abs. I'm going to make $1 million." And so Ben Stiller says to him, "Well, what if someone comes out with 8-minute abs?" And he goes, "You can't do abs in 8 minutes." So what if someone comes out with $6 coaching?
Right. That's true. That's true. Well, they can do it, you know, they can do it actually. But yeah, well, you know, it's I mean, everybody can't afford a lot of money. I get it.
Yeah. Well, it's a tremendous bargain. I would highly recommend people.
I'm telling you, this is a fact. You know, people pay a lot more and never talk to the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They talk to somebody in Utah or Florida.
That's right. And I answer all their questions every week. I make sure every question gets answered.
That's great. That's great.
So it's cheap.
And I really appreciate you doing this. And everybody here should appreciate how much you do this. I have a forum too, but I never do this. So you guys are really lucky.
Yep. So yeah, they know I'm great. but anyway. But anyway, so you guys get over to Legal Wiz. That's with the WIZ, legalwiz.com. You can get his land trust course, all of the other stuff, the sub 2. I mean, listen, when I got started, I got as much information as I could, and it got me started. So
no thanks.
You guys get over there and get it. And we appreciate you coming here and answering questions for us today.
Pleasure. Next time I'll bring one of my guitars in back there and play along.
Oh, all right. Great. Let's see. We may have a couple more before we got to get him out of here in a couple of minutes. Been saving for both you guys' courses. Your courses look amazing. Appreciate that, Matt. Giving incredible value. I agree. Bill Bronchick's awesome.
Thank you.
Anthony says you're the GOAT. Yep. Had a creative bundle that looks good. Yeah, I saw that. You can bundle your courses over there and save a bunch of money. Yeah. I know. Okay, what else? Let's see. What kind of guitars?
Expensive ones.
There you go.
You know, it's just very interesting because I'm always buying and selling and trading on this website called Reverb, which is a spinoff of eBay and stole all their business. So they're starting to send 1099Ks for people every year for all the money you've received. And at first I went, oh man, that's like 30 grand and 40 grand a year of stuff like buy, sell, and trade. And then I went, wait a minute, Schedule C, buying and selling guitars and amps. I'm going to write it off and take a loss.
Hey, Farouk said he started his creating financing journey with Bill Bronchick.
Great, thank you.
Farouk is a beast. He only lives about 30 minutes from me right now, so we've actually got to meet him a couple of times. So that's great. All right, guys. Let's see. Then Brad said, "What's the website again?" Let's see if we can put a banner.
Legal Wiz. Legal Wiz.
We're not giving legal advice today.
Right.
Let's see. It's
I think you could type it in the chat there, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it up here.
Oh, there you go.
Legalwiz.com. So the magic of StreamYard. So
I love this.
There you go. You guys get over there, pick up some of his courses. Great material. I'm telling you. All right, guys. Bill, we appreciate the heck out of you being here today with us.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here.
We'll have you back soon. And all right. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, that is it for this episode of Goat Talk on Trust. We appreciate the heck out of y'all being here. And if you have any questions, make sure that you put them in this thread. We'll get those answered for you. I'm going to put a link in here to Bill's website, legalwiz.com. And in addition, we're going to put a link to a little ebook that we put together on, I think it's like 50 reasons to use land trust. So we'll put that in the comments down here too, so y'all can grab that. So see y'all next week. So get out there, talk to some sellers, buy some houses.